Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are in YouTube, you'll see a little link down below. You can click on it and join us in Zoom. Once you're in Zoom, you can click on another little link and you'll end up in Mukana, which is where the producers all are. The producers are basically everyone watching that are asking questions, voting on those questions, talking amongst themselves to decide what questions they're going to ask next. They run the show. And you can too. Now, if you want to be on the show, if you want to be in the arena, the panel, just get here early. Now, you can get here as early as 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can check your system, make sure that everything's ready to go, but make sure that you're here by 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's roughly when we start the mic checks. It's also when we distribute the Discord link. If you're interested in being in this conversation all the time, we have over 1,100 people now chit-chatting throughout the day. You can come in at 6:40. The link only lasts a half an hour, so you just need to get here early. And make sure to change your name once you get into Discord to first name space last name, or we'll remove you. so you do need to do that. First hour is general questions about whatever you want to talk about, virtual media production. The second hour is usually something that we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today we're going to talk about storage. What do we do with all this data, and where do we put it, and how do we back it up? So that's going to be today. Tomorrow is the long day, Saturday. We're going to have 2 hours. We'll have the first hour, of course, and then 2 hours of education. Then Nick Jeshison's going to join us and talk about Unreal Engine, and we're going to talk about building our studio. Probably going to discuss MetaHumans a little bit. Nick and I have been playing with that. I would highly recommend, by the way, you can go up and sign up for MetaHumans. Best game ever. Is building people. Anyway, so you thought that there was a good game. It was Minecraft, and then there was Roblox, but MetaHuman, best game ever. You sit there and just build new people, and so it's free, and it's on the Epic site. So definitely check that out. Also, we're gonna have Matt. We're doing Matt in the kitchen. We're all cooking together, or watching us cook together. It's up to you. But in the email that went out this morning, you'll see the whole recipe and the shopping list for kimchi pancakes. I know it sounds crazy, but we're going to build them at 5 o'clock tomorrow. We'll actually open the doors a little early, probably at 4 o'clock, so you can come in and join and kind of get ready. That's just for all of you to hang out. And then Madeline's going to stop by and say hi, and then do a show. Now, there's 3 shows. There's a show that goes for YouTube. There's a show in Zoom, and there's a show where you can kind of watch me cutting things and hopefully not say anything bad over comms. And so those are the 3 shows that are actually going to be going on. I highly recommend checking it out. I think that beyond being really fun to watch, there's some kind of new kind of content that's getting created. It's not just a cooking show; it's something bigger. And so, if you have time, I definitely recommend cooking, especially if you cooked with us last week or the last 2 weeks. Come and cook with us. There'll be a whole group of you cooking together. If you can also just come and watch. You can actually just pin on the people that you want to watch in it. It's going to be a meeting, not a webinar, so everyone can kind of be in there and discussing that. And but yeah, and then you can look at the production one, and we're going to kind of give you ways to do that. So anyway, that's what we're working on there, and hopefully some of you will join. By the way, just to test some of the pieces of what we're doing, we are going to do a what we call an ECP test today. After. So if you want, our normal post show will be delayed a little bit, and I'm going to put the link in if you want to jump into that after the show, not right now, but after the show. We're going to do a little thing where we play around with moving people around within the meeting and put them into different rooms, and kind of, it's just a big experiment. We can explain that a little bit more while we're doing it. Anyway, that's what we got coming up. Bill, what do we got?
First question comes from Matt Hand in Bend, Oregon. And Matt says, how do you handle playback of video when you're using your ATEM switcher?
Go ahead, Jason.
Well, my answer will be the most vanilla one possible. I use HyperDex. HyperDex works seamlessly and beautifully, and will work, outputting simultaneous fill-in key over SDI and with HDMI just straight out.
I'll go with Sky and then Courtney.
I just plug in a second laptop and bring it into channel 4.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, that's basically, I use either a stick PC or, of course, the Signature Edition B-Link, which you can no longer
by Courtney.
And just bring that in, and, you can, I have my own playback software, but you can stop, queue up, you can go to different bookmarks, etc.
That's great.
But Oops, wrong button. That fade to black button is a nasty place, Bert.
Go ahead, Bill.
I embed it in Keynote via on my iPad Pro and then just HDMI that into the ATEM Mini.
Go ahead, Victor, and then David.
PlayoutBee or QLab, you can instigate any movie, anything through QLab and push it right out to an ATEM input.
Go ahead, David.
And I use MITI, triggered via Stream Deck, straight in. It'll do the whole switcheroo.
And that's MITTI, is that correct?
Yes, and I'll usually roll against on 2 different Macs behind me.
That's great. Next question.
Chris Comfort in New York, New York. Am I understanding correctly that a single panelist with bad internet could drop the resolution of an entire Zoom meeting, such as office hours?
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Not unless that person is the originator and host of the meeting. I don't believe so.
Yeah, I don't think that that's the case anymore with Zoom ever, maybe. I'm not sure. I think we had an earlier discussion that we had issues with Hangouts. If someone had a bad connection, it could destabilize the entire event. But that was a long time ago. But I think we were historically talking about it.
I thought something was mentioned a few days ago, and I was listening, not participating, but I felt like something talking about like 1080p. You're playing with fire a little bit if you're not careful. Or...
Well, it's just that it won't lower the resolution. The problem really is that if you have a bad connection, as a viewer, and we're pushing out a 1080p, which we do, you may have a bad experience because it doesn't just go down gracefully to 720. It gives you 1080p all the time.
For that viewer,
for that person.
Okay,
Doesn't
I'm sorry. That's why I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Absolutely. Great. Next question.
Jonas Dattel of Reutlingen, Germany is back with best way to do a local in-house live stream, streaming 1080p in a corporate network. Could NGINX, NGINX, RTMP plus HLS be a solution?
Go ahead, Jason.
I'm going to answer the question that I want to answer, which is the very best way to do this is with the what's it called? The web. I'm blanking. I have a box and it's down there. And basically, yes, you can stream to a web streamer, and it will work locally or over the public internet.
Just depends on how many people are hitting it. You're basically building an origin, and so that is not necessarily a. It depends on how big that corporate network is as to whether that server will be able to handle it. Typically, we've done this with multicast, but a lot of IT departments don't like that. Go ahead, Craig, and then Mickey.
Yeah, it's NGINX is what that spells out. And I just actually last night was playing around with the Raspberry Pi and running the NGINX software on that to make it a cheap streaming bridge. So I was going out of the ATEM directly into that, out HDMI from the Pi through Pi 4.
Yeah, and there are services that will do this. So multicast is the easiest one that is just like stand it up and it'll work. Then there are groups like a service like Hive, which is really built as a peer-to-peer solution. The big problem you have is saturating your server, or if you put it out to the internet, saturating your internet connection because everyone's hitting it. And so you really need something that's more of a peer-to-peer. The original one was Contiki or Collective now, but there's other ones that are available. For instance, Facebook Workplace will do it very effectively. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I definitely recommend a protocol that can do multicast, but only do it if the corporate infrastructure is capable. If you can set it up to do IGMP snooping, because if you don't, you're gonna saturate the backplane of your switches.
And you may saturate it anyway.
But yeah, with this, like even NDI could be a possible solution for that.
Leo?
I've done this a long time ago with things like real player servers and all that, but I would actually argue now is using something like a meeting system like Zoom, which will handle and cope with the bandwidth changes as different people, get them all to join the same meeting and then just stream it through that.
I mean, the big problem is if there's enough of them, that will saturate their internet connection. Like that's the big problem with HQs is that it's one thing to have a couple hundred people jump on something. It's another thing to have 2,000 people jump on something that, the external connection can't usually manage it. And so that's the real challenge there. Next question.
Doug Ferguson, our friend in Fort Wayne, Indiana, here on the panel says, if you were moving to a new market, what strategies would you take to get new business? And he's noting geographically.
Go ahead, Rupert.
I guess it depends on exactly what your service offering is, but if you're in the virtual production world, your number one strategy should be the availability of bandwidth. Other than that, if you're looking for a new market to move to, then traditional market research. But I think it depends on whether you are going somewhere and have to research there, or whether you have the choice of where to go and cart before the horse kind of thing.
Go ahead, Bill, and then Mickey.
I've always thought that companies don't hire people, people hire people, and you have to somehow make a connection with the people who have a possibility to hire you. You can let whoever shows up or calls you be a client, or you can say, I really want to work in this space. I'm going to go out and I'm going to find people who are in that space. The business things, Chamber of Commerce meetings and all those things were a traditional way to do that. Now virtually online, I think you have to create some sort of content, or at least post a good little bit so people get a sense of who you are, and then you will get some out of that. That's the only way I can think of these days in virtual space.
In the current space, until things get rougher, Facebook ads are really effective. like just, that's why people are upset about them, is they're super effective. And the nice thing about it is that you can target one geographic region. In fact, you can target the geographic region and the type of people, and there's all these things you can break down so that you only spend money on the people that you need to spend money on to get the word out to them. If you're doing, especially in a technology driven thing that a lot of people are going to likely be online, and with Facebook, it is an effective way to light up a market. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would probably hook up with the local community of people that do the same thing that you do, and see, build a relationship, and eventually, hopefully, they would pass on their extra work, or if they need more manpower in their system, they can get you and you can build that up. Because I lived in Singapore for a while, about 10 years ago, and that's how I was able to get jobs, just meeting up with people and eventually booming for them and taking on other projects for them when they're fully booked.
Good, Courtney.
Along a similar line, it depends on the size of the market, but if there's a local union, like a stagehands union, or a local, video engineers union, or video, the television studios may have members that are a member of union, look at applying there, or at least going to a meeting, and that's where you'll find a collection of like-minded people, and plus you might find a good pool of, employees, people to fill out a crew if you're going to be working in that neighborhood.
Next question.
David Brady in New York comes in with, what's the best method to stream Zoom events out to an RTMP destination, for example, YouTube, Facebook, or some custom ones, that will honor native Zoom experiences such as the multi-spotlight and so forth?
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I'm not 100% confident, but I think Restream.io, I'd have to research it more. Maybe somebody else has a better idea.
As far as the best solution that we're kind of going towards, we would probably screen scrape the participant view. Is going to give you probably the best view. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Leo.
Yeah, the built-in Facebook, YouTube, and other RTMP service streaming directly from YouTube. It doesn't honor the multi-spotlight, so you will have to do a screen scrape no matter what if you want that feature to come across.
It's also limited to 720p, so you're going to get a 1080p output from a screen scrape. So just and I literally send it. I'm sending it out, or the test that we're doing in the office. We have a computer watching the event. That's going out to an ATEM, so it's HDMI to the ATEM. That way we have a way to put up a slide or anything else that we might want to insert before the show. And then that goes to for us, it goes to a link, to an elemental link, which will then take it to AWS. And then from there, it's streamed, and that way go ahead.
You're not streaming direct out of the RTMP engine on the ATEM, are you?
No, we're not. And the reason for that is that the link will be a higher bandwidth mezzanine and more reliable to AWS, and we can manage that stream in the cloud. So we can basically once the link's plugged in, we just start it up, run it, set up all its settings. Everything else is set. I don't have to interact with the ATEM to do that, and so we're not not using it for that. You probably could do an RTMP from there, but the nice thing about putting it into the cloud, whether it's Restream or AWS, is now I can point it to as many different endpoints as I want. I can also do other additional processing, that type of thing. So there's a bunch of things that you could add, for instance, multiple languages and all kinds of other things if you wanted to embed it. And so that pipeline is more scalable from my perspective. Go ahead, Leo.
Really quickly, although I haven't tested it, Restream have added into their Restream Studio the ability to have an RTMP in and then to be able to put the stuff over the top. So in theory, with the new setup with Restream, you could do what you've just said of having a downstream key that you could control outside of there and then control it there. But I haven't tested it yet.
Yep. Next question.
Chris Roysden, Round Rock, says, afterthought from the social second hour, which is better, one YouTube channel with multiple playlists or separate channels for different types of content? For example, various corporate level or thought leader content versus more product focused or how-to content.
I would tend to split those into two channels and probably, just people go to a channel expecting something. If I go to a channel and there's a whole bunch of different things that I didn't expect, I tend not to subscribe. Like I'm just like, I don't know what this is going to mean to me unless the content is extremely good. I tend to, same thing with TikTok and other things. I kind of want to have the thing that I expect every piece. So I don't know what everyone else thinks, but I would tend to lean that direction. All right, next question.
Chris Fritchie of Tomball, Texas, here in the panel and often down office hours. I'm considering buying a projector for my studio. 1, to have a changing background, and 2, to use as a green screen by projecting a solid green color. Is this a good or a bad idea?
Go, Rupert.
I have a projector laying around that I was considering using for something, maybe not green screen, but effects or some kind of background. And the two things I haven't yet consolidated in my mind is heat and noise.
Go ahead, Jason, and then David.
I would say that if it works well for one, it will not work beautifully for the other. I would leave it to the panel to see whether or not it would be that solid green or something about the detail of a background. But I mean, projectors are so cheap right now that I'd be inclined to give it a shot.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, when my room was spun around 180 degrees early on in the pandemic, I employed a small little LG projector and used it for like an over-the-shoulder kind of pop pip. It was kind of handy.
Did it work? It worked well?
Well enough for to fool and confuse all my colleagues at work. Yeah.
Victor, and then Bill, and then Mickey. Let's go ahead and speed it up.
If you want to get into that, you might want to check with Lawrence or Roscoe about theater projection through QLab. That might be a world that for you would be quite wonderful.
Go ahead, Bill.
For me, the problem, I tried it once and I can't control the brightness of a projector. It's either on or it's off. You could use neutral density in front of it, but it's really hard to dial in the amount of background I wanted for a green screen or something like that. Same thing with projected images.
Vignetting is a big problem, unless you're at distance. That becomes a real issue where it's real hot in the center and then it fades out. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Paul.
Exactly. I was about to mention that you're going to get a hot spot right in the center of the green if you're going to use it to key. So that could cause a lot of problems. And also, if you are mixing in like a subject that is lit by actual studio lighting, you're going to need a really, really bright projector for that because it's hard to compete with studio lighting and lighting the subject.
Go ahead, Paul, real quick.
Yeah, there's a whole new generation of laser and LED projectors that are quiet, bright, and really cool. Unfortunately, they're really, really expensive right now.
And I don't think it would improve the vignetting problem. I mean, that's going to be the real, if you're not at distance, you're going to have a hot spot. So I think you'd probably find it to be frustrating. If you want a background all the time, TVs are great. Like 70-inch TVs would probably do a better job, or 80-inch, 85-inch TV would be better than a projector, in my opinion. Next question.
JJ McKenna from the panel in Santa Venetia, California says, what's the best outdoor waterproof omni choral mic for a permanent installation?
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
I'd probably look at the microphones from voice technologies and also maybe the Countryman ISOMAX, though I would not install those permanently outdoors because they would not be UV rated. And also, this just came in yesterday. I was sent a couple of mics from Dante, and they have what they call just sent to me, the the VLAV, I think they call it. The VLAV, and this one is the VLAV Micro. They say that it's waterproof, but I have yet to really put it through its paces yet.
Let's test it live, Mickey. Come on.
Post show,
Drop it
maybe.
into your
I'll get-
tea.
Post show, maybe. All right. Next question.
Chris Ritchie of Tomball, Texas is back with what is the best gray paint to use on a wall for video? What should I tell the Lowe's guy in order to mix the color? Is there a color code for 50% gray that doesn't use yellow, red, and blue? Can they not just use white and black?
Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, so the best one that are used in color grading studios is by a company called RP, and it's Munsell. It's a neutral gray, is what they've done in a lot of large production color grading suites. The only problem is per gallon, it's about $115, right? So if you want to do that, that is the best one, and that is the standard. Flanders Scientific came out with something with bare paint, and they came out with their own that you can go to that's like a Home Depot. That's what I did. And I got an N5. I don't know if you could see it here, but my entire room is that paint. And even this background is that paint as well, right? And that is about $35, $40 per gallon. So I'll put those links in the chat.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Rupert?
What's the best way to apply that? Brush, roller, or spray?
I used a roller very carefully. I applied 2 coats. After one, it looked pretty good, but I'm OCD, so I did another coat. Because.
And what we've done in the past, if that sounds great. I didn't know that. I mean, I'm going to look for those links that Charles is putting in. What we've done in the past is we literally take a 18% card and I hand it to someone at Lowe's and I say, I just match that color, and they just and they get pretty darn close, and it's not perfect. I'm sure that Charles's solution will be more accurate in both cases. But if you're looking for something to tell the Lowe's person, you just hand them a sample. They'll read it, and then it'll tell them what needs to be mixed together to have it come out the other end. You'll just get your gallon of paint. Next question.
Matt Hand from Bend, Oregon says, how do you prefer to handle graphic playback without alpha channel for an ATEM, vMix, or other similar system?
I use LumaKey. So, like that, a lot of us are old school enough. We remember when all we had was LumaKey. Back in the day when we had to use LumaKey in the snow going backwards. So the main thing is that the LumaKey works really well if you have harder edges. And you'll notice that a lot of broadcast has hard edges and no motion blur. Why? Because they have to be able to back into LumaKeys. So what needs to happen is you have a pure black, and then you have something that's not pure. And so technically, people would say 7.5% black and then you'd have 7.5% to key in that realm. So you'd have maybe 10, or actually 15 or 20 gray values to work with on that edge. I go to 15% because I don't think anyone can notice it, and so I usually do 15% black, which means that anything that's going to be black, I go into my output in Photoshop or in Motion or whatever, and I just move the curve up to make sure that nothing's going below. The black is actually 15% black. Now, if I really want to push it, I might go to 10. I don't go all the way to 7.5 because it can end up with harder edges. So once you do that, you just tell it to LumaKey, and you can play with it a little bit of the settings, and you'll be able to get it. You can even do LumaKey if you really spend some time on it. You can get LumaKey to do semi-transparency with dark colors, and there's all kinds of things that you can stretch and pull to make that work. If your key elements are very bright, you can do all kinds of semi-transparency with the darker areas within your lower key. So there's a lot you can do with LumaKey. You shouldn't be afraid of it. You should at least look at it, especially if you don't have a key fill setup or you don't want to use up an output for that. It's pretty effective. And so I would get to know it more, and we'll maybe do a session more on how to do some of those things, because we used to do it with Keynote all the time. That's how we did graphics for Keynote for about a year or two when we got started streaming. We just used Keynote and just LumaKey it in as it rolled in. Next question.
Paul Wallace of Austin, Texas says, is this feature suggestion for Mukana a good idea? Let panelists type in questions or type in answers for the questions, but don't show the answers unless you click on a button next to the question, which would then reveal all the answers.
What we're going to do first is let the panelists raise their hand so that we just know that they have an answer, and then we'll sort that out. I think that the problem with panelists typing is that they're now thinking about typing and not thinking about the questions and not being present. So we can't really have them typing anything in, or we want to have them type as little as possible because they just can't stay present. So that's the big thing. Having other people write in questions, write in answers in the chat is highly recommended. But we want to keep the panelists thinking about as little as possible other than being on the show. Next question.
Rupert McGray of Dallas, Texas says, regarding questions, the BBC has a panel show called Question Time. Members of the audience submit questions in advance, and if accepted and probably edited, they get to ask their question concisely on the show by reading from a card. Thoughts on this format?
As long as they follow the instructions, it works well. The problem really that we have with opening people's mics is that they oftentimes will go off the rails, and that's the thing you worry about. Go ahead, Leo.
The BBC has an advantage that it's the BBC, and that when people from the BBC tell you what to do, most people actually listen. I deal with exactly the same people who have been on that show, and then I tell them how to sort out their microphone and they ignore me. But when they're on the BBC, they do exactly what they're told.
Right. Right. So that's exactly the problem that we have. And so, what we found is that, and people have been using pre-built questions for a long time, and there are reasons to do it, to your point, Rupert. Like we do it with, we used to do it with screensavers, with the call for help, other things where what we would do is work with that person the whole week. Like when people could do a call-in show for, I don't understand how to use my computer or something with screensavers or with call for help or something. That person sent it in weeks ago. Then a producer talked to them to make sure that they weren't crazy. Then there was a setup call, to make sure that they really understood it. Then there's a bunch of meetings about how to make it work, like how to actually fix it. Then it goes in, then they get called into the show, and then there's a discussion that looks mostly authentic, but they've been heavily, built up for that. And so that can be done as a segment, and that you're going to really go back and forth. And the same thing with Car Talk. If anyone's ever listened to Car Talk was exactly the same thing. They have mechanics. They literally have a shop that, they would test everything out. They sound really smart because they had a whole bunch of people working on the answer for quite some time. They're not coming up with it off the top of their head. But the back and forth is part of the show. So to your point, you could build a show that way, and we could build shows that way, and we probably will to some degree. I mean, if you look at even the lab sessions that we do and some of the other things, it's a little bit more lax, and we do that. And I think it's a very, very valid platform to do that in. So it has its place. It's not super scalable. If you want to include, the big thing is that we want to include as much of the audience as possible. So the reason we do it this way is so that more questions can be answered at a higher velocity, and people voting on them, become part of the conversation. They get to control it in real time, without us having to do setup and figuring out things and everything else. And I have a theory that is more engaging, but I don't know. But that's the theory right now. It's a good question. Next question.
Dan Modine of Manchester, Connecticut says, Alex, what do you use for a pop filter?
Someone else could probably call it out faster than I can. This is a aftermarket pop filter.
Broadcast supply filter.
Yeah.
BSW makes these, and if you look under pop filters for this thing, yeah, you'll find it.
Robert from Twit actually prints his own, so you can't print them. Yeah, the ones I think most of us have are the BSW. Is that the same one you have, Jim? I can just see yours easily, and
Yep.
That's the one Jason has. I think that's the one that matches the color and just snaps on. Next question.
Michael Marsh of San Anselmo, California says, any recommendations on apps for time and project billing?
Yeah, go ahead, JJ.
There are a number of project management software products available, and not all of them have billing components built into them, but I know that Teamwork does, so that it helps if you're a person building projects, you can actually create more projects that you can replicate, and every time you're building is similar. And then the assets that you use for your billing, if it's multiple people, you can then put their units for billing time inside there. So
go ahead,
teamwork.com
Jason.
is one.
For the last 12 years, I've used an app that I adore from a company, now I'm blanking, Market Circle. And the app is called Billings, and it does exactly that. It allows you to bill against a retainer. It allows you to track your app track your time independently of your billing, or just straight up bill and then send invoices, and I love it.
One quick note to everyone watching is that now the panelists are getting ahead of the producers. So the producers, I think it's because we have a lot of questions for the second hour, which is great. Please do that more. But we're also, the panelists have gotten really good at answering the questions. It's very focused, but we're now churning through the questions faster. So we'll run out of questions and we'll move into the second hour early if we don't have more general questions. All right, go ahead, Bill.
Chris Fritchie of Trumbull, Texas is back with each time I record to Facebook Live, the audio was recorded as mono. Is there a way to fix that? I'm using a DPA 4066 into a Mixpre 6.2 into Audition. I have my channel in Audition mapped to the Mixpre channel 1 stereo.
I'm just waiting for Mickey to raise his hand. Go ahead, Mickey.
Oh, someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but if I recall correctly, Facebook only does mono unless you're streaming B format ambisonics into it.
I thought it did stereo as well. I thought that there was a selection in Facebook. I have to admit that I have not streamed regularly to Facebook for a while. So I remember there's a stereo selection. Go ahead, Chris.
I know it's a bit silly for me to say I'm streaming on Facebook, but if I use my iPhone and record live, it's in stereo. But if I use this, it's in mono. It's driving me crazy.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, if that's the case, then I'm not sure like how Audition is in the picture here, but just make sure that you are outputting from whatever virtual or hardware interface that you're using. You're actually spitting out to both channels and not just one of them.
Yeah, because it sounds like channel 1 by itself. I mean, I'd probably want to send both channels. Go ahead, Todd.
For what it's worth, my wife and I were having this problem in Premiere the other day, where there's only one channel coming in no matter what you do, and there's no way through routing to choose mono or stereo. I'm not sure if that's the same in Audition, but it's completely absent in the architecture of Premiere that I could find.
Right.
Yeah, if it's a single channel audio stream going out to a two channel stereo bus, then make sure it's pan center. If it's a if it's a stereo track, a 2-channel track, and one is blank, you might want to bring that actual audio feed into a mono channel as opposed to a stereo one and pan that center.
Next question.
David Brady in New York is up next with a BBC report this morning, talked about ultra white paint, primarily for heat reflection. What other practical applications could something like this have? And he has the link there to the BBC science story about ultra white paint.
Sounds great. I for some reason it makes me want to put it with Vanta Black. So you have like Vanta Black on half of a thing, and then ultra white on the other half, and I think that would be
greatest zebra ever.
Yeah, exactly. I think we should make like a big ceramic zebra for our front yard, kind of like a gnome, but have it be Vanta Black and ultra white, and it would just confuse everybody.
Put a little sign in the front that says $100 if you can capture this and accurately get it on your camera.
Yeah. Obviously, white Sykes come to mind. That seems like it would be a really interesting way to do that, to get it to go to peak really quickly. Go ahead, Charles, and then Sky.
My first thought would be to bounce light off of it, just as reflection sides, lights for keys or anything like that. I would like to test that out, but now I'm thinking about what you just said with the zebra and the Vanta Black. So,
yeah, I think I see a lot of them are listed as like for backdrops. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, I think I'd rather talk to the engineer, Courtney or David, because white used to make televisions physically audibly buzz, and so Courtney might have an answer.
Yeah,
these are back in the tube days.
Well, you wouldn't want it on camera unless you want it to go to 100%, because it would reduce your contrast. And that was why you get the note, never wear a white shirt, because they'll have to balance for the shirt and your skin, and it would make you, to see any detail on the shirt, they have to bring the white level, the contrast, down to a point where you look dark on your face. But it would be good for using in reflectors, as was said earlier. If you're going to build your own reflectors or build soft boxes, paint the back of a curved piece of wood or card and then put a light that's blocked from direct view and bounce it only off that white would give you a great soft reflector.
Bill, real quick.
I wonder if it would be good because when I used to do work for PetSmart, a black poodle coming in was really hard to get any detail without just adding a ton of light. On the opposite side, I would wonder if a super white reflector would be a health hazard for your eyes on set. I don't know yet.
Yeah. Sounds like something we need to test. All right, next question.
Yeah, absolutely. Ranjan from Dubai says, could someone go through SRT rendezvous?
I don't know if go ahead, Beju.
I think what he's asking is about what exactly is SRT rendezvous. So if you just go a little bit back to it, SRT, if you're using SRT, you normally have three modes. You can either be a listener, that you are sitting on a known public IP or location on the network. You have caller, you're connecting to the known public IP, and you have rendezvous when you don't have a known public IP on both ends. So rendezvous normally tries to negotiate how you connect, tries to basically negotiate a connection when it doesn't have an IP. It's a hit and miss solution, so normally it's something you try to avoid. If in case you can't do it, you're connecting from two, let's say, two corporate networks or two private residences where you don't have public IPs. One solution you can do is you either connect to a PC running something like vMix or SRT gate or something on EC2 instance, or you can use something like SRT gateway running on AWS, which is also a nice way to do it, especially if you need to distribute one SRT stream to multiple destinations.
Great answer. Next question.
Todd Reynolds of North Adams, Massachusetts says, when connecting an iPad into ATEM Mini Pro, it seems like we're stuck with the aspect ratio with bars on the sides due to a mismatch. Does the panel have any workarounds inside the ATEM Mini itself?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that one. The iPad that I have and everybody else, same issue. It's you get the bars on the sides, which looks like this normally. It's cut to 2. So that's the normal mode that everybody's seeing. There is another app that you can get to kind of overcome this. It's called Shift Screen. So if I hit that, then that same page does fill the screen. So you can do it with the app. The bummer is that then you have to use this as your browser, which I don't like all the time. So what I do is I go back to the other mode, which looks like that. And then in vMix, I'll just double click on it, go to position, and then I'll zoom it in. So here's what it looks like as it starts to fill the screen. You notice that it's going to crop the top and the bottom. So I'll usually go to about there, and then I'll still, move around. I'll just be aware of what I'm.
And I think you could do that with ATEM with the DVE as well, right?
Yeah, you could also do it within the ATEM. It's faster, for me on this setup to do it this way. Yeah, that's the way I do it.
Perfect, Jason.
The way that I explained this prior to going on air was simply using a downstream key. Setting a key to basically paint out those black bars, and then using that as an omission. As long as you have something behind it, you're all good.
Go ahead, David.
And Sienna has a NDI browser similar to what Guy just showed, but at work we'll use scalers. We'll just throw hardware at it.
Yeah, our old-fashioned way to do it is, I'll just push through an FS, FS2, FS4, FSH, and just scale it up. But the DVE should work as well. I've definitely done that. Next question.
Ranjan's back from Dubai again with any opinion on the lightning to Ethernet adapter with power over Ethernet charging.
I don't know if that'll work. Rupert?
I guess this is similar to a solution I asked about last week, and I've since tried it. It works fine. I've got a PoE splitter on the end of an Ethernet cable, break that out to lightning cable into the phone, Ethernet also. I had
it'll push charge?
I had it on 100 feet and charged the phone from 0 to 100%, worked fine.
Wow. So that's just the standard Ethernet to USB?
Yep, I used the standard lightning cable into a specific splitter I got that has a USB power output and a, in fact, if you can hold on 30 seconds, I'll bring it.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be and JJ, I think, is showing it there. Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I use the USB camera module, put the power through that. And then I have this Anchor. It's a 3 USB port, and then and it works really well. Except, if I remember correctly, it didn't work with FaceTime of all things, but otherwise it worked great.
David?
Yeah, and another company, Red Park, sells a certified PoE injector combination, gigabit speeds.
That's great. Next question.
Matt Hand of Bend, Oregon is back with this one. He says, thanks for the answer for the hardware for playback on video. What preferred software do you use?
So I think that David had mentioned MIDI, M-I-T-T-I. Victor had mentioned QLab. Then there's also Presenter Pro is another one that a lot of people use for playback. I'm trying to think of other great software. Go ahead, Jason.
There's a really great one that that usually tops your list. Keynote.
Keynote can do it as well. Keynote's playback is not frame for frame often, so you just have to be kind of careful of. It's good, but it's not great. So just be kind of clear of that. And then of course, the PlayoutBee is software in a Raspberry Pi. Go ahead, David, and then Guy.
And my colleagues at work are still stuck on Playback Pro.
They're probably stuck on Mojave too, right? I mean, you can't move forward. I don't know if I have 2 keys over here that I haven't used for a long time. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, vMix on the PC and Mimo Live on the Mac.
Mimo Live is a great playout on the Mac. Sky, and then Rupert.
I just play it directly out of QuickTime, so it's basically a screen scrape.
The hard part there is just not seeing any of the interface. When you're playing it out in the stream, it's hard to do in QuickTime to do it well. Go ahead, Rupert, and then Mickey.
I'm just circling back. So this is PoE in here, and then it gives out network and USB. So USB to Lightning, put a coupler on there into the Ethernet, work great.
That's great. Mickey, and then Beju.
Yeah, there's a tank solution, which is a Softron, so I believe on the air.
Yeah, the Softron one is definitely the heavy. We have that, and we use it for some of our larger scale playback. It's a little bit more expensive than all the other ones, but it's hardcore. Like it will do the job. Go ahead, Beju.
Yeah, Resolume Arena is also another good cross-platform one. You have Mac and PC as well. And after that, you go up to the big daddies like Watch Out, Disguise, etc. Especially if you want to do multiple playout, really to mix stuff in.
We always call Watch Out Lookout because we have to look at it. Watch Out has some issues with scaling and the way it manages it. And you end up with a lot of bad pixels at the top and the bottom if you're not careful. Go ahead, Beju.
Yeah, with Watch Out, you often need to combine it with a Barco E2, basically to balance it out really well. But it's a good solution, especially if you need to mix LED wall projection, feed it the same feed into for broadcast, as well as like if you're managing large walls at the same time.
Yep. Next question.
Ken Jones in Seattle is up next with, if my audience is mostly on smartphones, does it really matter if I stream 1080 or 720 to a 4-inch screen?
Go ahead, Leo.
Yes, it does, because the reality is that a lot of people may not just be watching on a 4-inch screen, so they'll be able to watch it on and push it out using various different technologies to a bigger screen. Also, if you're going to be doing it and you want people who are going to be watching in later on, once you've gone in that version, there's many things out there that people wish they had actually streamed out in a higher version earlier, so that it doesn't look bad now.
A common behavior for me is to take streams and just use my AirPlay to push them from my phone to the Apple TV. So that's and then if it's 720, you definitely notice it. Next question.
Chris Comfort in New York City says, with the panelists who answer the question about video playback through the ATEM Mini, do you send audio through HDMI as well? Do you have to change settings in Zoom when you do that?
Go ahead, Jason.
You certainly can send audio through it. The output with HDMI is completely compatible. I'd say the answer is, as long as you've got your audio tuned correctly and your levels look good in the ATEM app, you should be fine.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, only do that if the audio and the whatever's being played out has been pre-mixed, pre-processed by me, so I know what level and how everything's coming out. If not, then feed it through the mixer.
I almost always do something separate to the mixer. So when it goes out to the stream, the entire audio chain is completely separate from the video chain until till right before it gets embedded and sent out, and usually I don't embed it in the switcher unless I have to. Next question.
Gordon Lake of Los Angeles, California. What's a good tripod for the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras?
Go ahead, Bill.
So one of those what depends questions, because my rig keeps getting bigger and bigger. I started out with a small HD cage, and then I keep adding things to it. The batteries are really underpowered, those little ones that come with the Blackmagic. So I have a bigger battery unit. Then the next thing you know, I need something to mount the T5 card, and then I want to put it on some sort of tripod plate, and maybe you've got a light, and things just keep building and building. So these Tinker Toy rigs, I always say go with a bigger tripod than you would expect to need. You can do it on the little Manfrotto double leg things and things like that, but eventually it gets unstable. So I would move up in tripod if you can, possibly for your first purchase.
Go ahead, Sky.
What you're trying to do is make a smooth movement, left, right, up and down, pan, tilt. So what the bigger tripods are, maybe Manfrottos have a very good price point at around $700 to $900. Of course, you can get as high as the 5,000, the Sacklers, and the
5,000. You're just getting started.
I know, that's just for the handle. Yeah,
5,000 for the head.
Yeah,
well, that's just for the head. So yeah, smooth. You want smooth, so you want weight.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would add up the complete weights of all the components that you're adding to your camera system, including the lens, if you're putting a prompter on, if you're putting a cage and all that, handles, monitors, add that up together and multiply that by 2. And that's the tripod system I would go for. And I would always go with a head and stick system that has a ball, a connector in it, so that you can easily balance it, a 75 mil ball or 100 mil ball. Never go for a flat Mitchell type head.
Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, so I second everything that Mickey just said. What I did for mine when I was doing some productions in studios, I bought a Pro line, and I got the wheels for it so I can move the entire rig as I went. And then for the head, I was trying to do it on a budget. I found something that could hold about 36 kilograms, kilos. Yeah. And that would fit my camera, the rigs, the monitors, the entire contraption. And it was a fluid head, and it was about $1,000 for just the level that I needed to get to. So I'll put that link in the chat.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris, real quick.
Yeah, I use a Manfrotto 290 and a 502 head just for the Blackmagic camera. And of course, every one of those is on one of these cages. And I don't have any problem with that, but I don't know, you guys are all sounding like it's really expensive tripod. This is pretty cheap.
Yeah, I the one that I have mine on right now, and the one that I travel with, it doesn't have a fluid head. Is a Mi Photo, and it's a carbon Mi Photo. And what I like about it is that it's light. It'll fit into a carry-on, which is important to me for this tripod. And the center, it has a center lift, so I can make fine adjustments vertically with it really quickly, and that is important to me. And it's really compact. I can just throw it on the side of a pack. So for a travel one, I like that one a lot. I do like in the sub 600. Like I need something that handles a lot of weight. I've got a bunch of Benros that have worked really well. They're just less expensive, in that area, and I found them to be pretty useful. In the 1 to 3,000 range, there's Sackler 18s and so on and so forth that are pretty good. At $5,000 or $6,000, there's a Hot Pod, which I think is now Sackler. It used to be O'Connor. If you're putting teleprompters on and you drop that thing on, it's a heavy piece of material, but you can move it up and down 2 feet. And all the weight of the teleprompter up and down. So when you have to do fine adjustments for your talent, it's like life-changing. And then for the heavier, like we need to do something, it's the 2060s and the 2575s are what we use for that. Go ahead, Mickey.
And yeah, the heavier the rig, I would say in pounds, maybe like if you go above 20 or 30 pounds, you'd want to have a stick system that has spreaders in them, either floor spreaders or ones that go midway.
Next question.
Lee Love, Washington, D.C. is up next with, can you suggest a comms headset with push-to-talk with lightning connections?
I think that there are some options. You probably need a converter, but I think that there are some options on the Unity website of all things. I think that I have some that I bought from their website that are just out of reach for me, that have kind of a Bluetooth type control. But I don't think they go to Lightning. I think you'd need to go Lightning to TRRS. Go Rupert.
I mean, I've looked into various iterations of this. In general, what you want to watch out for is if it does have a button, whether that's a mute switch or whether it's actually going to trigger the talk function in whatever app you're using. So just watch out for that distinction.
The amazing thing that's never been built that I've requested for manufacturers for years is something that had a hard mute, like a mechanical mute on a headset that would go into a phone that you can click on it. It's not some kind of weird control or whatever, but it literally breaks the connection so that you absolutely know you're muted and then you're not. And it's still valuable. It'll still be valuable because you just want to know when you're in a meeting that you're really off. Next question.
Moving on to the Jan Landy's question from Las Vegas. I'm a Mac man, but I inherited a Windows laptop. Is there an app on Windows that is similar to Alfred? Not sure what Alfred is.
Kind of manages all of your, I think it manages kind of search. And I mean, you can do a lot of automation with it. I'm sure there is. I don't know if we know what it is. Sorry. Stumped us. Next question.
Vincent Alvarez of Bellingham, Washington. Thoughts on the Portal TV, not the frame unit, sits on your TV for my dad turning 80 to be used mainly as a camera connection to me. User-friendly quality image, and when will I need a portal?
Go ahead, Paul, real quick.
Yeah, real quick. It's great, but it doesn't have the Zoom app. It has a beautiful picture on your big TV.
Paul says halfway through his breakfast. Next question.
Robert Boyle of Workingham in the UK. I'm planning to get some in-ear monitors for Zoom and so forth. I'm currently using AirPod Pros, so would like to stay wireless. Any recommendations, and are there any downsides to going wireless versus going wired?
Go ahead, Jason, and then Rupert. Pretty quick. We're now behind. So the producers picked up the pace, and now we're churning through questions. Go ahead, Jason.
The major thing that you're going to run into is latency. You can get a body pack. It's going to cost you some real money. As far as which, Sennheiser makes earbuds that are inexpensive in-ear monitors. Shure makes them from $100 to about $1,000, and that's the deal.
Rupert, Courtney, and Mickey, real quick.
For a fixed position for long periods of time, I just prefer to stay wired. I have a long coiled cable that goes over to my mixer, allows me to mix in other things, and then I clip it to my belt right here. I've got a 1/4 inch, which allows me to take these off and put real cans on if I want to. I can walk all around the room. Does it all day long.
Go ahead, Courtney, and then Mickey.
Yeah, the main disadvantage of using wireless is battery life, because I've seen so many professional Zoom calls, on-air network stuff where they're using AirPods, and they, in the middle of the show, they're going, can you hear us? Can you hear us? I think we've lost John, and the battery fails while they're waiting for 2 hours to go on air.
Yeah, Mickey, and then Leo, real quick.
I'm just curious if Robert needs to do actual critical listening on it. If so, then I would go with a professional level in-ear monitor system. Sennheiser Sennheiser and Shure make them for $1,000 and up. But if not, even Shure, their SE series of in-ear monitors, you could get a Bluetooth enabled cable for them for I believe $100 US.
Go ahead, Leo, real quick.
The ME M6s, they have Bluetooth and wired, so you can swap between them. But exactly, they are very cheap. But it's worth trying it to see if you like it, and rather than spending a lot of money.
Since you didn't give us a price, Phonak makes a really great one. It's the Jack Bauer version of from 24. Just put it in your ear. You can wander around. It's not Bluetooth. It's a little expensive, like $2,500 per channel, but it's amazing. All right, next question.
John Barker, Malmö, Sweden, says, what is the panel's go-to mini PC for Zoom? 3 screens would be best.
Courtney reaches down. It's the B-Link by Courtney. So
no longer available anywhere.
Yeah, we got
office hour.
We just exactly. we've cleaned them out again. We are now starting to buy some of the larger ones, which are great too. I think the i5s. I think we got a couple of those recently for an upcoming show. Next question.
Victor Cahallo, our band leader from Brookings, South Dakota. Can I run multiple copies of PlayoutBee on the same Raspberry Pi computer?
I don't think it would be able to address both of them at the same time. I think you would need 2 Pis. You'd have to pony up for another small piece of hardware. Yeah, exactly. I think I have now 3 of them. I haven't gotten the licenses for 2 of them. I've just got them built. So I'm going to license up 2 more, and then I'll have 3 of them that are just kind of general graphics. Go ahead, Victor.
I was just thinking if, on another port, another instance of the app, maybe I'm crazy, but boy, wouldn't that be nice?
It would be, but it's only got one HDMI out, and it doesn't I don't think it has the power to do a lot of other things. It's kind of amazing that you can do something in a $100 box. And so I think it wouldn't be able to do both. It's having trouble with the first one. Next question.
Jan Landy in Las Vegas says, does anybody on the panel have any experience with the new DJI drone? And if not, any comments? Also, would you also need a license for this one? It's only been out for what, a day?
It's right over
Jen,
in
it
my
was
desk.
announced yesterday.
Yeah,
they don't even exist.
I can show you. I'll post some videos of the flights. No, I'm just kidding. I don't have it. It looks pretty impressive. Go ahead, Victor.
There are plenty of first day video reviews that go into depth. Plenty of the good guys did them.
Yeah, so it looks pretty impressive. Yeah, there's a couple of places where it felt like they cut weird corners with resolution and not being able to do D-log, and there's a bunch of things that I felt like they had at some point at the end. It feels like they had to just turn a couple things off to make it work, and that's usually when I see that I go, oh, maybe I'll wait for the next version up. Next question.
Ken Jordan says, what's the old school mini TV behind David Brady, and where can I get one?
We were talking about that in the pre-show. Where did you get that, David? So explain this a little bit. We're going to run a little over, but we'll catch up.
Some friends of mine sent this from Japan. It's from a company called Takara Tomy Toys, and it's a little TV, and you can insert an iPod or iPod Touch, iPhone, or Android in there. The actual app, which I don't have, allows you to change channels. But I'm running the 9-hour version of Office Hours in there right now, just for visual entertainment.
That's great. Next question.
Hasmuk, our friend from Cape Town, South Africa, says John's Mixpre setup with channel 1 and channel 2 for mic and channel 3 and 4 for headphones did not work for me. If I plugged my headset in the stereo out, I can hear my own mic, but plugged in headphones, I hear nothing. What am I doing wrong here?
Maggie?
Might be a headphone preset. Might want to look into the headphone preset menu. I know we've created custom stuff for your specific use case, Hasmuk, but John's setup needs a different headphone preset setup.
Next question.
Lee Love in Washington, D.C. says, has anyone had any experience using USB to Ethernet to separate Dante networks?
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey. And then Jason.
Yeah, it's a shame Victor isn't here anymore. Definitely with a lot of Macs that have come out in the past 5 years, the built-in Ethernet connections on those Macs, especially the iMacs, iMac Pros, Mac Minis, they don't work with Dante very well. So you need to use a USB or an external Ethernet NIC with those.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, Mickey's answer was perfect. It works really well, and it's always best to actually get the Apple adapter or something from a well-known company like Otherworld Computing.
Next question.
Ray Harris in Houston says, what's the best way to use a lower third motion graphic with an ATEM Mini? File type, background color, and setup, please.
Go ahead, Jason.
We don't have time for the nitty-gritty, but I would say Keynote.
Well, as far as format goes, if you're really talking about a lower third motion graphic with an ATEM Mini, the best way to do it is most likely going to be a key fill out of QLab is probably the most flexible because you're going to have key fill or Apple ProRes 4x4 with an alpha channel is going to be probably one of your best. If you only have a couple of them, then you can load them into the switcher. You can also use a TGA sequence. Note that the motion version of the TGA or a ping sequence, the motion when Motion writes it on Apple Motion will write an improper compressed TGA, while After Effects will write the correct one. So those are little notes to know about that little process. Not that I've had to deal with it for hours or that I'm bitter. Go ahead, Courtney.
And doesn't the HyperDeck output a key and a fill, but you'd have to convert it from SDI into HDMI and use 2 inputs on your ATEM?
Oh, Mini. Yep. On a Mini, you would have to do that. So that would be problematic. So going back to probably either Jason's suggestion with a Luma key, with the keynote, or any other video playout, you could use only one channel if you wanted to. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
And the last one in the regular queue today, Leo Mendel of London says, did anyone watch the StreamYard Hopin event yesterday? And if so, any comments?
Didn't have time. What did you think, Leo? Did they do any better?
So, unfortunately, the very, very, very first person on had horrific audio and lots of complaints, which they then fixed. The rest of it is really good in respect to the majority of the production quality was reasonable because it wasn't Hopin people, it was StreamYard people who actually do shows every single week. So you could tell that they actually were there and they were doing it on a regular basis. And they're social media people that you would recognize some of their names and things. So they are good and they present well. The biggest problem I have with it, though, was the FOMO experience. They ran 5 stages at once, plus a networking lounge, plus entertainment areas. You were literally presented with up to 9 different places that were live at once on the basis that let's duplicate what you would have in a real world environment. So many that you actually went, I can't actually watch any of these. And it's just too much happening at once that you've gone, I can't. I walk away. I'm finding this really hard at the moment.
I think that's the problem. I mean, obviously they want to show it because they have lots of corporate clients that want to do this multi-track, stuff that is based on being constrained by time and space. And so, we're just still in this transition mode. And I think that the problem with all these companies that have raised all this money to do virtual events is they're basically doing exactly what we did in the beginning of film, which is they're just shooting a stage. At the beginning of film, we were like, we'll shoot a stage play. And then it didn't take us very long to realize we could do a lot more than shoot a stage play. And we didn't have to be constrained in that way. And we moved past that. But what we have is billions of dollars have been invested. And we have to remember that when investors, it doesn't mean that something's going to be successful when they get billions of dollars into a market. It just means that they're playing, roulette with, the venture capital just see heat. And so they throw some money at it. We'll see how this goes. Only 1 in 10 have to actually work. So just because a bunch of money's going into it doesn't mean it's the future. It just means that there's a bunch of people making bets on it. And the real problem is that they're betting on where the receiver was. Not even where the receiver is. They're throwing the ball or kicking the ball or throwing the puck or whatever to where the receiver was. So it's way behind where the receiver is or where the receiver is going. Go ahead, Leo.
It just reminds me of like the explosion of cable TV and other multi-channel TVs that you're saying, because I can do it, I can put on more and more channels. When you're fighting against yourself, which is effectively what they are doing, they're putting up 5 or 6 different things against themselves. You actually reduce your audience. And of course, the minute you start reducing your audience, everybody looks at it and go, well, there's not that many people in here. There must be in another room. So they start moving around. And before you know it, everybody's going, where's it all happening? Where's it all happening? And they walk away.
And the thing is that there's a couple things when you start adding interactivity. So when the way we do our show here, when it's very responsive to the audience, you need a critical mass, to your point. You need a critical mass of that audience to be there, or it feels very slow and a heavy lift. It also means when you're really interacting with your audience, there's a real reason they want to be in there. And then they're upset that they can't be in every single one of the sessions because it's actually interesting. It's easy to put up records later if you're just talking to people, one to many and not really interacting with them. But once you start interacting with them, they wish they were there because they had things to say and they had things to ask, and and so it's a much different experience. And so it's going to be, we'll go through this for a couple of years, but that style, they may be able to pivot, but that style of conference is, I think, going to not go away. Everyone always says, "Oh, it's not going to die." Well, it's not going to die, but it's going to be like print or radio compared to everything else. So anyway, so it's just going to fall away as far as being important. Next question. Okay, now we're switching our direction to storage, and how it comes up. We get questions almost every week about what do I do and how do I back this up? Or almost all of us have had that moment where we lost a bunch of stuff on our hard drive, or we ran out of space, or we threw something away we shouldn't have. And so I felt that it would be good to have a frank discussion about how we store stuff and where we put it and how we back it up and how we get back to it. So yeah, go ahead, Sky.
Well, again, the classic comment is if you don't have it in at least 2 places, and I've heard 3, you don't have your footage. So
nothing exists until it's in 3 places.
There you go. And from here on out, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, usually for us, for things that are important, I will not tell you that I keep everything in 3 places, because I don't. I have things that I view as important archival, and some stuff that isn't. And so for the stuff that's important archival, I have it in 2 physical places and then in the cloud. Like those are the places that we put the most important things. And then down below that is 2 physical spaces. And then down below that is just on whatever, on a general storage hard drive. So you don't want to, I think sometimes we get people into like feeling that they have to have it in 3 places, everything in 3 places all the time. And that's problematic. Unless someone else has any other comments to kick off, we'll just jump into the questions. Go ahead, Jason.
I'd say a better way to think about this is if it's not in 3 places, you really shouldn't feel okay about it. And if you're okay, if you're okay under those circumstances, go for it.
Yeah. Next question.
Okay, the first one in this grouping is Louis Hartzog of Mainz, and he says, we're thinking about using AWS Glacier for long-term backups and archiving, since they provide free credit for NGOs. Any thoughts or workflow tips on backing up to Glacier specifically?
Go ahead, Charles.
I'm actually thinking about using the same thing. A company that I know that is transferring, half a petabyte or so is using them, and so far it's been very, very good. It's been stable. They have different tiers, so if you have a very long term, like the prices just dramatically drop. But for the standard daily backup, or that you need to check once a month or something like that, I mean, it's in the pennies. So I think they have the market sort of cornered.
And as far as getting it there, I think, isn't it a mixture of they can send you a box or send you a truck?
They have the snowmobile, which is what very large companies use, and they pull up a trailer,
right?
And they plug in and everything. But for smaller companies, if you have a good connection, what I'm not sure about, which I'm sure they do, their backend connection, the same way that Frame.io will suck up all of your bandwidth and say it's mine. I don't know how they're doing that on their end. That's the only question that I have that I'm trying to find out.
Yep. Go ahead, Leo, and then David, and then Jim, and then Jason.
So the big thing I'd make sure you test is the retrieval speed, and if it's sensible, and work out how much you need to retrieve or what you need to retrieve and the time it'll take. If you've got critical backups on some of these systems, the retrieval speed is so slow on some of it that you may be waiting for days, and I mean days, to get things back. Because of the speed that you're on. That's why they give it to you on the Glacier stuff.
Yep. And that's also why sometimes we use that as we haven't used Glacier, but we've used other things that are very slow to pull out. Those are the backups to our nearline. They're just there to make sure that there's another place that this exists, that I'm still going to, if I still have it physically or in something that's relatively addressable, but if all goes wrong, for very little money, I have it somewhere else that I can still go back to it. I think that's been how we've used some of these long-term backups. Go ahead, David, and then Jim.
Yeah, we're actually decommissioning a SAN and expecting a snowball to be delivered to move about 120, 160 terabytes of stuff out from premises into the cloud.
And then Jim, and then Jason.
Right. From a workflow perspective, another option, if you have VMware already in your environment, Amazon provides services, storage gateways to kind of ease the integration with that service that allows you to, one, control the amount of bandwidth that's consumed when the data is transferred from your site up into Glacier or S3. And then if you have data that's already in S3, you can create life cycles to automatically migrate that data to Glacier to save money.
Go, Jason.
It's important to understand that Amazon gives absolutely nothing away for free ever. And if you're getting credits, it's because, Glacier's namesake is based upon the fact that it is cold, nearline storage. I don't know exactly how they do it. It depends on your tier, but at the end of the day, you need to treat it as that. That is your third and final, nuclear war kind of a backup, because it takes quite a while, and that's why it's so inexpensive. As far as a good way to kind of trickle it up, Synology has an excellent interface that makes the entire process extremely easy, and then you can rate limit it accordingly.
Go ahead, Charles, and then Sky.
I would add to Leo's note, that's a very good point. And from what I know from Glacier, their cheapest and slowest is up to a 12-hour time to turn around, which in the past, if a client calls us that they need something, we usually tell them a 24-hour turnaround time. So to be able to have it at the cheapest rate at 12 hours, it's not a bad deal for a sub penny per gig.
Go ahead, Sky, and then Bill.
What I'm hearing is I think we should have a definition of instant return and storage and then long storage, because what I'm not seeing either is LTO, which was a long tradition of how to store big files for a cheap price on a tape, but it's miserable to get. I mean, I see David could maybe help us understanding.
Well, a lot of times we think of it as online, nearline, offline are the three that a lot of times we kind of view things as, where, online is like, it's there. You can instantly access it. It's in your hard drive, locally available at speed. Nearline is, it might take a little bit to get to it. It might, but it's still like minutes away or an hour away of, being able to pull it off of something. And then offline is something that, it'll take a while. Like when I know when I was at ILM, we used LTO, and it took the day. Like if you asked for it in the morning, you get it the next morning. But it would take, they have to go and retrieve the tape, and and we lost a lot of data that way. we definitely had not a great experience with tapes. So it was not something that we relied on that heavily from our side. Bill?
I also think it's really important to set client expectations as to how long you're going to try to store their material. There are certain things like full-scale movies that have an incredibly long tail. Most corporate data and typical video things really don't have that long a tail. So in my agreements, I say I'll keep things for 3 years. I actually functionally try to keep them for 7 because it's part of my backup for IRS materials and stuff like that. But anything longer than that is going to be an exception to the rules. So I just want to manage a client's expectation up front as to how long I'm the repository of their data. Their master I'll keep longer, but the entire backup of all their raw footage and everything, at some point, people think their stuff is golden. It's really not. And I get into corporate situations where they've changed uniforms 3 times. I'm never going to go back except for retrospective and ever use that stuff again.
Go ahead, Jim, and then Courtney.
Right, on the tape option, Amazon also has a virtual tape library option. So essentially, you have that the old school method of using a tape without the need to use something like an Iron Mountain to do your tape migrations.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yes, I mean, beat me to it. I was just going to mention Iron Mountain, and they have for entertainment business, they have an Iron Mountain Entertainment Services that's designed for long-term archiving, and for more frequent access if you need it near time. But they're in a number of different cities where you can actually take them a hard drive if you want to.
One of the things that we've done in the past, right now we tend to keep stuff for clients. In PixelCore, the contract said 30 days. We'll deliver it to you. We'll deliver you all the assets immediately after the event within a week. And then from that week, 30 days is what we promised. Now, we kept almost everything forever. People would come back and ask for something. But what I wanted was in the contract that if I can't find it, I'm not accountable for it. So it's, and then you do with some of our clients, we would talk about for security reasons, we would flush the system. So we've had clients where we literally deliver the stuff minutes after the event, and then we flush, we drop all the gear. Throw everything away, because they don't want, especially if you're it's high level individuals and you have a lot of pre and post show where they could have said things that may or may not be useful. And so you also want to kind of know what those rules of engagement are. Next question.
Matt Hand of Bend, Oregon. Do you have a preferred brand of NAS, network attached storage?
Go ahead, Jason.
For many years, I really liked Drobo, and at least depending upon who you ask, starting either, in 2020 or, moving back from that. They were acquired and have since kind of stopped pushing the envelope. I really like Synology. I would stay away from anything that is QNAS based purely because of their massive of late security issues.
Go ahead, Leo, and then Doug.
Almost identical. Synology at the moment. Love them. Don't fall down the trap of buying a one disk machine, because you're going to regret it. Buying the multiples, and the multiples are really good. They even support the latest types of SSD disks, etc.
Go ahead, Doug.
So I quickly just made a list of everything that I have. It's a little ridiculous. My favorite has been the 145 drive that we just, that's our recent NAS, but we also have 2 Thecus NAS, 1 QNAP, 1 Synology, and 2 Aurikas. So I have like 153 terabytes of online storage right now, and our 45 drive is only a third full. So, but yeah, you do want, like Leo said, don't rely on just like a one hard drive unit. You want a RAID. RAID 6 is a really good RAID that you can lose 2 hard drives in, like if you have a 8 bay drive, 2 hard drives can fail at the same time and you still can save your data. So the RAID drives are have saved me before, because it's not if a drive is going to fail, it's when is it going to fail.
David, and then Todd, and then Mickey.
The Studio Network Solution Evo product is for smaller work groups, not a bad solution. More of a MAM than a NAS, but pretty solid thing. I'll find a link and put it up there.
You good, Todd, and then Mickey.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Synology too. Excuse me, I'm probably the least data experienced of all of you, and boy, the other day, their live chat totally hooked me up, and they were just awesome and quick and fantastic.
Mickey.
Yeah, definitely. It needs to be a system that can do 2 drive parity. So if 2 drives fail, you're still in good shape. If you need 8 drive base or less, Synology. But if you go above that, I would suggest building your own with that's based off Unraid or TrueNAS if you need something that's more simple to configure.
Go ahead, Leo.
So this is a bit of a different way of looking at that. I actually have 4 Synologies and they back each other up. So going from where Mickey's saying is that I wouldn't go to have that many drives in one box and then rely on it, because something else will fail on that box. So I actually felt that it was easier to do just standard mirroring on the disks and then mirror it and then take the whole thing and it's mirrored off anyway. So even if this building burned down, I've got it somewhere completely different, and they just sit in the background doing it on their own.
Good, Rupert.
Just in terms of RAID and drives failing, make sure you monitor that regularly, or sign up check the alerts, because you don't want to have a complete failure and then find, in fact, that one drive failed 3 months ago and you didn't even know. Now you've got a complete failure. So check that health regularly.
Absolutely. Next question.
Jonas Dattel, writing in Germany, says, what do you think of the AWS snow cone for on-location storage? We brushed across that.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, really, the snow cone's designed for data transfer, not for using as a storage device on an everyday use case. So it's designed to transfer a bunch of data up to Amazon or the reverse.
Go ahead, Charles.
I know 2 people that are using it on shoots right now for data transfer, and so far the consensus is it's really stable, it's solid, it's pretty fast. Hopefully in a month or 2, when production ends, I'll have some final details, but so far it's good.
Next question.
Carmi Weinswig of Redondo Beach, California says, with a free BDS/ZFS based NAS, what's the minimum spec to be able to get 10 gigabytes per second?
100 gigabytes.
100. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, 100 gigabytes per second. Wow. Okay. Yeah, you'd most likely want to stick to a system that is cluster based, so that you can spread the load over multiple chassis. You'd need to have those on a backplane that's based off QSFP, which can do 50 to 100 gigabits per second. So the bits versus bytes, you have to multiply that to get your throughput there. And of course, the actual storage should be able to support that. So I'd probably, since I don't know what the RAID system you're running, but you'd probably want to set that up with an SSD, what do you call this, high-speed cache, as opposed to running the transfers directly to your spinning drives. You'd want to do an SSD high-speed cache with that. And if you're doing that, you're probably looking at if it is indeed 100 gigabytes per second you're looking for, you'd probably need around the 512 individual SSDs. But if you're talking about 100 gigabits, that would be around 64 SSDs to reach that throughput.
And a note to our producers, this will be a short hour if you don't ask more questions about storage, which is totally fine, but just letting you know. Go ahead, Jason, and then Leo.
Yeah, that's just fine. Believe me, we can vamp. So, if you'd like to get bored,
storage. Let's talk about
no
storage.
problem. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but 100 gigabytes per second cannot be attained on a spinning drive configuration in any way, shape, or form. I think that is almost entirely safe to assume. Second, just from a more abstract standpoint, I'm going to strongly recommend against some sort of roll your own. Companies like OWC make really solid RAID arrays that will use existing architectures and are going to, in the long run, be much, much better. Do not build your own, especially if you want to go high end.
I just love the idea of 100 gigabytes per second in my
Oh,
head.
me too. But what do you do? That's like 4K 120. What do you?
Go ahead, Leo.
So first of all, I'm like, okay, Mickey's the sound guy, and he's just blown us all away. I think we can all retire now. That's it. But back to what Jason says, the discs normally 6 gig is the data transfer on SSD. You're going to really struggle on anything that's spinning. And I would say the whole point of RAID, a redundant array of inexpensive disks, means that the devices are supposed to be disposable and throwawayable, which means that building your own, and then when the stuff hits the fan, you won't be able to get pieces for it. If you are going to be building anything like this is where you go with some of the bigger names.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
And yeah, just going back to what Jason was talking about regarding building up that capacity for throughput. That's why I would recommend going for a cluster-based system so that you can scale it up or down as needed, either in terms of speed or storage capacity.
Next question.
Okay, Vincent Alvarez, Bellingham, Washington. He runs a NAS, a Synology DS420J, 4-disc. He got a OneDrive failure light while off, pulled out the drive to see the label in order to order a replacement. It now shows a 2-drive failure, and he's wondering if he did something wrong and completely destroyed any chances of recovering the data.
By the way, this is why you have data in 2 places. Or 3 places, is because you have a hard drive that goes bad. Nothing stressful as long as even just a single RAID. Nothing stressful as long as it's not all just there. That's the thing you always have to worry about. Go ahead, Jason.
Do not touch it. Do not power it down. Do not pass go. You will not be collecting $200. Put the new disk in. Allow it to repopulate. Hopefully you've read that section about repopulation. What's more important to know, though, is that if anything else is wrong with any of the other disks, you're really in trouble, and SpinRite might be able to help you.
I will say that that was the one. I had a RAID go bad, and I would have lost my entire Aperture library at the time, except I backed it up every 2 weeks. So I did lose a couple files, but they were like not a big deal, but it's super important to have it in a couple places. Go ahead, Charles.
So I wanted to bounce off of this, but also ask the panel. I'm a big fan of certifying my drives before I install them into any RAID, and it takes a while. I just did it with 64 terabytes. Took about 80 hours. I did it over the weekend. But in the last 8 years that I've been certifying drives, none of those drives have failed, and they're still running at their studios. And those that I have not, some have failed. So I would consider that.
Absolutely. What's the process of certifying a drive?
I can. Everyone has their own, I guess. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
No, so I was introduced to it by the guys at SoftRaid. Right, so I used that just to certify the drives. Essentially, the process is depending on the size of that spinning drive or the group of. It writes a very long string of numbers, and then it reads it back. And then if that's okay, it'll zero out the drive completely, so that if you do have the possibility, or if it's plausible that it can fail, then you are going to be in a zeroed out base. Because the one thing that you don't want to run into is you start to fill up the drive and you have a bad sector you knew nothing about, and then you run into that. So,
go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, this doesn't directly answer Vincent's question, but that's why it's important, at least within a single RAID system, single RAID package, have at least 2 drive parity, 3 if possible. So I don't suggest like RAIDs that are 4 drive base or lower. And also another good practice to for people to do would be to purchase the drives from different sources. Don't have all your drives come from a single lot or single package, so that if there's a bad batch of drives, say from a drive manufacturer, not all your drives are from that same batch. It's varied. You spread out the chances of something failing or multiple drives failing.
Yeah, Jason.
Mickey's point is going to be exactly what I was going to hit on before talking about the way that I certify drives. It is critical, buy one from Newegg. If you want the same manufacturer, that's fine. Buy one from Newegg and buy one from Amazon. I guarantee they will be in different patches. It's that simple. The way I certify a drive is a little bit slow and a little bit particular, but I, knock on wood, have never had one of my drives that's been certified fail in any way, actually, now that I think about it, ever. I zero the drive from stem to stern, and then I run spin right level 3. It's that simple.
All right, go ahead, Leo.
So I'm going back to the actual question, which is what has he done wrong, or where does he go? Apart from the fact that I feel for you, and I've got the same similar war stories. If it was me, where I'll be sitting now, would be putting back the original system as it was before I actually removed any discs, and just hoping and praying it comes back together again. I wouldn't be looking to make any more changes until I actually put the disc back in, because that invariably, when it comes back in, it could have been a minor issue and it will just come back to life. That will be my thoughts.
Yeah, and the lesson to take away from it also is don't do anything mechanical with it. Even if you have a light that says something's wrong, get all the stuff off of it before. Don't do anything mechanical with a RAID unless you're sure that at least your critical files are all backed up somewhere. I mean, you might have a bunch of render files, you might have a bunch of other things that are there, but if the critical files, you need to make sure that they're somewhere before you mechanically pull anything out of a RAID. Because that's what happened with my Aperture RAID, is I pulled a drive out because it was bad and just never came back. it was gone. And so it was stressful, but not like a upset, because I very quickly had to build another backup of that. Go ahead, Leo.
You're also down the street from one of the best data recovery companies in the entire world.
They are awesome. There's at the end of my road is the what is it? Disc savers is literally
Drive savers. Yeah,
drive savers is literally 3 minutes from my house. It's right at the corner of the highway where I get on. Leo and then Charles.
Yeah, I mean the thing with when you're dealing with the disaster of it and when the discs go is that it's actually the removal and the power that causes more disruption than anything else. I've had exactly what you were saying earlier, a war story I can go into, but in summary, the thing that we had all the discs sitting there, the spare discs sitting there in the data center, so they're already there. They'd actually been there for 3 years, and what we found is when we finally put a disk in to replace a disk which had failed, that disk immediately failed, even though it was brand new out of the wrapper and been sitting there for 3 years, accustomed and tuned into the area. It's the changes that cause the outage.
Go ahead. Now we're going to speed up because our producers have answered the call. We've got lots of questions now. But we'll go ahead. Charles and then Doug real quick. And then Mickey real quick.
So to add to Mickey's and Jason's point, I would also add lean towards data center drives. They're just built a little tougher to endure those long years of write and read. So.
Yep. Doug and then Mickey.
Yeah, we had a major loss early on in our company. We lost 2.5 years worth of stuff. We had 3 8-drive Drobos, and the way Drobos work is it's a proprietary RAID system. So some people might like them, but I will not ever use Drobo again. The way that the drives work and they wrote to the things, we lost the data. We sent the drives to a company, and they quoted maybe $10,000 to recover it. They couldn't do it, because of the proprietary.
Right. Yeah, Mickey.
Yeah, I guess sort of a good tag on to what Doug just mentioned is that's one of the advantages of running an open source based RAID system like Unraid or TrueNAS, because it's a lot easier for companies like Drive Savers to dig into the file system there, as opposed to a proprietary one from like the likes of Synology or Drobo. It takes them a couple months or years to build up the tools to recover from a proprietary system.
Next question.
Joe D'Amato of Vancouver, BC is in next with, is anyone buying their way out of storage performance challenges by investing in all flash solutions? Buy one's cry runs, right?
Go ahead, Jason.
I have several extremely fast from OWC RAID array things that connect and actually make use of the full power of Thunderbolt 3. And it is, the one I have was maybe $3,000, and it's, with 1x redundancy, a total of 2 or 4 terabytes. So, again, it is not a scalable thing to do all SSD if you're talking about, an actual workflow that has real pixels.
Yep. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, for my 4K and 8K color grading, those current files and projects sit on an NVMe RAID 0 that is daily copied to 100 terabyte backup just in case, but I work from that NVMe all the time.
Yeah, the NVMe RAIDs are unbelievable for performance.
They are amazing.
Yeah, and stable too. I mean, the reality is they're probably safer on the NVMe than a spinning disk. But you still want to back it up. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Roscoe.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. If you actually need the throughput, then you need to go through that route to get you need to go through getting flash storage to get that speed. Though you don't need to have all your files on flash storage. Like after the project is done, you don't need them in high speed hot storage, and you can move them off to slower spinning disk.
This is a good example of online versus nearline. Like the online super fast, ready and available, and then nearline being something you might take a little more time. Roscoe?
Yeah, I just doubled down on everything said. They're only there for specific rendering I'm doing right then and there, and those files are always backed up somewhere else, only the renders of that thing. So those files are not for long time storage at all.
Yep. Next question.
Alton Christensen in Brooklyn is back with best GUI or GUI interface for apps for using and managing Amazon Glacier.
Don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
I like Synologies, but I've already stated that.
Next question.
Comes to us from Peter Rosato in Las Vegas. Anyone using Wasabi?
Go ahead, Jason.
Yep, I used it for about, I don't know, I want to say a 500 gigabyte update for a client's office that was moving off site, and then maybe another 2 terabytes thereafter, and it works very, very well.
Next question.
Nick Pavlinek in Southeast Michigan, on a small scale, what can you reasonably expect out of a thumb drive for storage? How long can you store data on it, and any manufacturer, and what would you suggest for reliability?
Go ahead, Jason.
I'm sounding like a fanboy here, but OWC's thumb drives are the most legitimate thing you will ever see. They are fast, and I mean really fast. They are over-provisioned. The only thumb drives I've ever seen that are over-provisioned, and they work wonderfully.
And this show is not brought to you by OWC.
Yeah, seriously, I'm sorry, but it's all storage.
Mickey. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I personally treat thumb drives as disposables. Like, I don't care if I lose it like 30 minutes from now.
Yep. Yeah, that's how I treat them. I've had a lot of Patriots that have been good as well. I mean, Patriot drives. But again, these are things that I'm delivering to somebody. I might mail them because they're light. I might, light and big, and they're easy to send over, but they're disposable. Next question.
Alan Scott, New Brunswick, Canada. I'm confused by all the Synology model numbers. I don't need a media server, just multi-machine backup. Can anyone suggest a model or at least explain their numbering system?
Go ahead, Jason.
Their numbering system doesn't matter. You want at least 4 drives, and just because it can be a media server doesn't mean it needs to be a media server. It's that simple.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I don't understand their numbering system either, but most of the time, the second number is the number of drive bays. Aside from that, it depends on how much storage you need and the speed that you need the storage to be at.
Go ahead, Charles.
I think their latest one in their batch is the DS1821 Plus, and I've seen a couple of studios just have that attached to their particular machines, and I've heard some good things about it. And it's an 8-bay, so I don't know if you need to go that big.
Go ahead, Leo, and then Mickey.
Okay, so the last 2 digits are the year of manufacture. So 18, 19, 20, 21. So that gives you the version. Just be aware, they actually, like iPhones, retire devices. So 14s and below, I believe, are now no longer supported. So you will lose, the latest versions won't work. Then they have a letter, which is there's like a J and there's a D. The Jazz is the baby ones, and then the Plus is basically exactly the same as the main one, but it supports additional RAID devices externally. So the DS4, which is 4 bays, 20, which is a 2020 machine, then is basically the mid rate is right the sweet spot, and then you've got the Plus, which will mean it will do extra things. That's roughly giving you an overview.
Good, Mickey.
And yeah, the Plus also typically has additional processing power, so you can run more of their applications built into the NAS, like their surveillance system and such.
Next question.
Aaron Huslidge in Durham, North Carolina says, anyone using Backblaze?
It's been a great service, and I know people who are very passionate about it, but I don't know anybody using it right now. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, we don't use it, but they do a really, really good report on hard drives quarterly that will give you fail rates and percentages, and that's why I look to before we buy drives.
That's great. Next question.
Sky Gleason here on the panel from Seattle, managing storage RAID's Avid Tierra block used to be the controlling software for central storage systems. What are some of the current large storage management software? And has anybody heard of Tiger software?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, Avid Nexus is still the standard for what do you call this, facilities that mainly run Avid. It just makes sense to run it because it not only integrates the actual storage system, but also a MAM built in. For strictly like managing storage, on RAID, TrueNAS has a really good GUI in terms of having a good dashboard for your storage as a whole, but it doesn't take into account what you're storing inside the system.
Next question.
Rupert McCrae of Dallas, Texas says, what about physical storage and environmental considerations for keeping offline on-site backups?
Bill?
I spent about $750 for a Canon Fire Safe that has a little data port in it. I don't expect that to save me from all problems, but it's nice, the idea that if somebody casually ever were to break in and be looking around, I just want the hassle of them having to get into a safe to get my data drives. I think in a modest little smoky fire, it'll probably help. And that's all I'm considering it for. It's not the same as offsite solution, but it just provides an extra layer. Here in my office, it's over my closet, sits there quietly, and I can back up to it through that USB port.
Go ahead, Jason.
In general, if it's not going to be plugged in, you should expect to spin up and allow it to kind of refresh the surface. I would say at least every 7 years, but really it should be every year because that's easier to remember.
Yeah, our rule of thumb is every 6 months, and it needs to be turned. Yeah, so having things that drives don't like are heat, humidity. Those are things that are they you know, so think about those as you store things to make sure that they stay somewhere where, especially if they're going to be stored. A lot of the larger server units, we had a kind of a process with PixelCore because we had thousands of drives where there was just kind of a schedule of the person who did archiving. We had a person dedicated to archiving would just pull out a certain number of drives, turn them on, do a search, put them away. Just see, and then let us know if they didn't work. But they'd get through them about every 3 to 4 months. All the drives. And it would just be it was just kind of little maintenance that just kept them all healthy. And we actually never lost a drive. Knock on wood. I mean that thousands of drives, just kind of keeping them stored well. David.
Yeah, you could use the time to roll back your clocks and change your smoke detector battery as a good reminder.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Next question.
Rich Gilpin of Olympia, Washington. Best practice to keep external drives running or unplug. Oh, do you keep them running or do you unplug them when you're not using them?
Go ahead, Jason. No, you're much quieter than we expected.
Zoom mute.
Well,
there you go. Nope. You did it twice. There you go. Stream
okay,
decks are
there
awesome.
it is. Sorry. Much quieter. The cynic comes out. I see what you're doing, Lindsay. Okay. Let's see. I'm so tired of this question. You really shouldn't leave a drive on perpetually unless for some reason you really feel the need to do that. This question usually originates somewhere around along the lines of, should I shut down my computer every day? And the answer is, if it's not a bad idea, but SSDs have made it less of a moot point. Long-term storage, there is no reason to keep it spinning as long as you are going to be responsibly powering your things down.
Go ahead, Leo.
Already covered.
Doug, and then Sky.
I access my stuff all the time, even old projects. So we do have our stuff online all the time, but we have UPSs with everything plugged in because you don't want that quick power hit to hit your RAID drive. Because if the RAID drive goes bad, I mean, you have a potential of it. But we also have hard drives on shelves too. So if by chance the RAIDs do go down, we do have a backup.
You always want to tell people that you try to tell someone about how important backup is, but no one takes it really seriously until they lose a bunch of data. Like it's one of those things. Like it's like telling teenage kids, like, hey, someday you're really going to wish you hadn't done that, and eventually, but they can't do it until they experience the pain of whatever that is.
My gut still hurts from 8 years ago.
Yeah. Sky, and then Jason.
I have physically taken a shoe to a hard drive to get the old drive that had been on the shelf out of the goo of its. So Jason, to your point, yes, the SSD is not a moving physical drive because it's a big flash drive, but a physical machine that's in a goo, I've had them gum up. Now, as soon as I get it spinning, I transferred all that data off to something else, but I no longer trusted that old style of mechanical drive, and David could help me.
If Fenwick has talked about a technique that I hadn't heard until he had done it, where he spins the drive and then he stops it, and he said it's enough to kind of break it loose, to have it go. I've never tried that, but it's
turtling.
That's what he calls it.
I just used a shoe. It was a nice leather.
That'd be so mean to do to a turtle. That's all I'm saying. I mean, you can do it to a drive, but calling it a turtle assumes that you might have done it to a turtle. And I'm just saying that's not appropriate. Jason?
Please don't call it turtling. That's horrible. Yes, I have used a similar method to kind of increase the viscosity inside of a drive. As a rule, it shouldn't be necessary, and I officially do not condone the use of a shoe or any object that involves whacking the thing. That's just me.
Go ahead.
You only get one chance.
You use the whack technique to get the TV back in line when it's all fuzzy. We used to freeze drives when they would have the ping of death. You'd put them in rice or the things, throw them in the freezer for a day, bring them on, spin them up, and get the stuff off.
Rupert?
I was just going to say, I have used a hammer as a means of secure data destruction.
We had the hammer. So we would drive a drill through it then whack it 3 times, and then throw it away. I knew I had a friend that worked somewhere that they would put 3 drill holes in and then triangle. Then they would hit it with a sledgehammer. Then they would apply high heat, and then they'd put it into a storage area. Like so that's how they decommissioned the drives. Like they never got rid of them. But there was a big he's at the basement. I was like, "What basement floor?" He's like, 27th basement floor. Anyway, Jason.
My favorite story of this, which is absolutely true, is the British government's secure destruction involves zeroing the drive who knows how many times, then grinding up the hard drives, and then storing the dust for a however long. I think a drill press with a 3-drive triangle, and please use protective eyewear. They are, we call them platters, but they are a mix of glass and plastic that really do. They snap. It's not. You'll know when it's broken. We'll leave it at that.
What I have found is that they're remarkably durable. Like you think that, oh, I'll just hit it with a hammer a couple times. You hit it with a hammer, you don't see any real change. You're like, wow, that was a lot of drive. Go ahead, Leo.
I think that's the reality with it, is that the thing that dies on disk so often is the control board, not necessarily the platters themselves.
Yeah,
it's the control board that is the thing that people think their disk has died, and unless you've actually given it some serious whack, it's the control board that's gone.
What I'm amazed at, if you go through the lobby of drive savers, as I said, they're right down the street, and I've been there because they saved a drive for me one time, and they have pictures of the drive, or they have the drives that they recovered from, and it was like this one was in a fire, and it just looks like it would be
It's on their website. It is truly amazing. Yeah. Like, when you see the NCIS, like the FBI, like, oh, we're going to recover this. No, they don't. Look at DriveSaver's website, because the FBI goes to them.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey, and then Bill.
Yeah, just going back to what Leo was saying, a lot of times when it's just the board that died, if you have a matching drive that has the same board with the same firmware, you can actually do a quick swap, and a lot of times they will just pop up and work.
That would be terrifying. That's like doing heart surgery on your data. But I mean, if you need it, you need it. Go ahead, Bill, and then Leo.
If you've got a bunch of drives and you need to get rid of them, be sure. Some of the commercial recyclers in most towns have these machines that literally eat washing machines and things like that. I mean, they will literally shred anything made of anything, and that's a nice quick way to just get through the whole thing.
Go ahead, Leo.
So bouncing back on what Mickey's just said about changing the drives, it's exactly the same. If you've got RAID systems, a lot of the RAID systems will, depending on where they go, some of them hold the information on the drive, some of them hold them on the RAID system. Be aware which does which. I have done the thing where I've done the wrong thing, and there is never a feeling that there is a feeling like you've just you almost like there. I mean, that is it. I'm called up Dell at the time, and they went, actually, if you do this command that we don't tell you about, it fixes it. And I was like, my life was saved.
One thing to be careful of also is if you inadvertently delete files, the first thing to do is, like on a drive, is don't do anything. don't write anything to it. There are drive software, and I have done it. I have been able to recover. For me, it was an SD card. It was a little micro SD card from my GoPro, because I had shooting 6 for spherical. You put them in, and you're kind of in this mode of doing them, and you put them in, you copy it over, you delete it, and there's a whole bunch of things, and I just got it reversed, and I wiped out one angle of my thing in the field, and you can recover it, but you have to do it really immediately. Like, you can't, like, even if it goes in there and starts doing any kind of shuffling, it'll be over. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, the moment there's any sort of garbage collection and maintenance of that flash unit, you're in trouble. And the reason that works, for those who are curious, now the questions come in. 12 minutes left. I guess I'll cut it short.
Yep. Next question.
Moving on, Ronnie Halsey of Thompson, Norway says, suggestions for Mac M1 10 gigabit per second Ethernet adapter that works good towards a local edit array. That doesn't seem storagey.
Good. Mickey and then Jason.
Yeah, I haven't tried these on the M1 yet, but what have worked really well on the Intel machines have been the 10 gig adapters from OWC and also from Sonnet, but more I've had more success with the OWC one.
Now Jason has nothing to say because he already mentioned the OWC.
Yep. Oh, give me a hard time. All right. Well, Lindsay, in this case, I'm going to assume that you've already bought the M1 Mac, in which case an OWC dock. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
All right. Next question.
Ed Rubin of Oakland, California. LTO tapes versus duplicate drives for backup. Discuss.
I would always use the drive. I've had so many horror stories with LTOs that I would definitely use raw drives at this point with what we call toasters, which are just a couple. You can actually have a bay of 1, 2, 4 that you can just drop them into and copy them and put them into a case. And they make cases that look like cassette holders. Charles?
Yeah, I would second that completely. I was working on a production in South America. They were sending up 2 LTO drives, and I was like, why are you sending 2 of the same? It's like, because one usually fails.
Yeah.
And
That's your backup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next question.
Ed Rubin in Oakland, California. Is RAID 5 best for speed and redundancy?
Go ahead, Jason.
It's best for redundancy. There is a very slight advantage to using RAID 6 if you have enough drives to actually do it. And this is all highly contingent upon the format of the array once you've actually made the cluster.
Next question.
Mark Harder in Brooklyn. Doug had a horrible loss, not recovered. So sorry. Who has lost some huge amount of data and gotten it back? Looking for a war story, Mark is.
Doug already didn't get it back. The soldiers are still in the field on that one. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm still crying.
I deal in very low rent kind of stuff compared to the rest of you guys, but I had Glyph Drive. It was a 4 bay at the time, 16 terabyte total, and Con Ed, the power company, decided to flip the entire building off and on quickly, and it blew out the power supply. So I had to go buy I was lucky. I went and bought it was RAID 5, I think I had it set at, and I went to B&H, got the exact same model, and just took the drives out and put them in the same order, and it was back to life immediately. And Glyph did replace the chassis, and it happened a few more times, and I'm now on their newer 2-drive systems. And I have 2 of them, and they're on RAID 0, and they just mirror each other now. So
you have such a faith. If something did a couple times, I'd be like,
everything I'm getting is free after that point, after I bought the first.
Oh, right.
And I needed to buy the exact same model to try to get that RAID 5 back. And I was very lucky because they said that wouldn't work. It may not work, and it did work. So I was lucky. I don't know if I'd buy them again, even though they've had good customer service, because there's so much failure and they're so delicate, these chassis. Right. So
next question.
Brody Hunter has our last one here at this point. New York City. I'm about to begin using a LaCie 6 bay backup array with Thunderbolt 3. It's pre-configured for RAID 5, but can be reconfigured. Any suggestions for setup, RAID configuration, and certification prior to being used with my 2020 MacBook Pro?
I go ahead, Jason, and then Charles.
I've delayed it, raising my hand. I'll defer to Charles because I'm talking too much.
Yeah, go ahead, Charles, and then Mickey.
No, so for just a certification, I will use I will use SoftRate just for the certification. I know that Jason has an option for his certification. We just make sure that you go through that process. After that, the built-in RAID that comes with those is pretty good, but that's the process that I would take before adding anything to it.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, RAID 5 gives you a decent balance of speed and reliability, but I'm not familiar with this LaCie 6 big, but if it has options for RAID 6 or RAID 10, then I would look into that, depending again on your needs.
There we have it. Got to the end of the hour. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, maybe it goes without saying, but I think as important as your data is, you also need a bootable configuration of what you're using to access that data. If you're on a deadline, having that is sometimes critical to getting back up and operating, so that all the configurations, all the things you do in talking to that off storage, nearline or offline, is also archived.
Yep, absolutely. Jason?
Since we have a few more minutes, I also wanted to bring in when we talk about powering up or leaving on or shutting down, it's important to note that brownouts will kill technology, not just storage, but all technology more reliably than blackouts. That instead of 110 volts at 60 hertz, getting 108 at 55 or 40 absolutely challenges every single capacitor that is in your entire workflow, and that will absolutely destroy something.
We've had in Zimbabwe, I had a bright out, which is that suddenly we were sitting there working, and suddenly someone looked at me and said, "Does it feel like it got a lot brighter in here?" And I just looked at them. I was like, "Unplug everything!" And as we ran out, we started and we first unplugged all the laptops and pulled them off, and then pulled it up, and literally sparks were coming out of the power supplies. And we were so having something in between is useful. Go ahead, Sky.
The Windows environment used to have a thing called a ghost, and you would put that onto a flash drive, but it was physically your operating system for just the laptop. I don't know if that is the current backup, to Roscoe's point, of at least your central drive, not your storage.
For a lot of PCs, we ghost them just because that way we can make sure to.
And that's a physical. That's the name of the software. And that it's not a term.
Not anymore. It used to be called Norton Ghost. Norton Ghost hasn't been used for years.
Well, it's been a while since I've done it. But what is the current solution, Jason?
Current solution is from Terabyte Unlimited, and it's an app called Image for Windows. They have a product that is completely USB bootable and will allow you to restore any of your backups.
Thank you.
And generally,
I've always done imaging 24 hours with Time Machine just on my Macs, just so I have one that I can completely replace back if I need to.
The big thing with PCs is that we would do it immediately after we installed all the software and everything else. We'd clone it before we started touching the internet, before we opened up a browser, before we did all those other things, so that if we had a virus, we could drive it. We could drive it back. Now, some of the viruses are more advanced today, and so they can get into the BIOS and other things like that. And so it's not 100% the way it used to be as far as being safe on a PC. But fortunately, we now have the FBI willing to hack into our computers.
You know what? The NSA has a copy, so just file a FOIA request and you'll be good.
I saw that. They were like, the FBI just broke into everybody's computers, but it's okay. And they just want to get rid of this virus. I was like, it's really scary that they can do that. Like they just showed us a little skill set that they had that they hadn't shown us before. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think it's also good to point out that there's a good reason, at least for the larger storage arrays, to go with an enterprise grade or a NAS grade drive system, like on Western Digital, the gold line, or the WD red line, and on Seagate the Iron Wolf, or I believe they call their enterprise grade Exos, because they guarantee those for a much longer runtime. 5 years is quite short. Some of them rate them for 7-8 years, and also they're rated to handle the massive amount of vibration of hundreds of drives being in a single rack.
Right, Leo.
Just related to while we were talking about the restore and everything, the software I use, Murray, from Murray HD Clone, enables you to take a machine, a complete machine, and move it to another machine. It has a bootable disk. For Windows, it's really great.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, just one more thought. You'll see these occasional blog posts of, outrageously large hard drive, the biggest one ever, now released and available by Company X. It's a good idea because the size of a box, the hard drive size has not changed appreciably since it was invented. And the storage has gone up, the density of storage on these data platters has gone up, I'd say about 1 billion-fold, roughly in the last 30 years. So to that end, it's important to not get the very highest screaming edge one. And to Mickey's point, yes, NAS-enabled ones may be slower, but they are designed to be absolutely bulletproof. And the warranty, by the way, does not cover the data. It never has, and it never will.
I usually look when I'm buying RAIDs is where does the price jump a lot? So there's, it's like when the drives go up, and then it jumps,
cost per gigabyte. That's it.
But the ones after that, I tend not to, because I also feel like they're cutting edge. These ones are all commoditized. We figured out how to do those ones. And so I tend to not jump into the really expensive ones. I mean, as far as incrementally. All right. Well, we made it. that was a really interesting interaction between the producers and the panelists. So the panelists got much more efficient. So the panelists did a really good job today on both hours of just boom, 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 nailing those questions. Still a little bit of fun, still a little bit of detail, but then we started going faster than the producers, and the producers were like, we can handle this, we can handle this, we can knock it out. So producers came back and pushed back and gave us more questions. And if I hadn't cut it off, we'd still be talking. So now we're getting into this. It's interesting. It's an interesting interaction that we're having. It's as a group of creating the show. So it's really fascinating. So thank you all. Great job by the producers driving the conversation with your questions. Great job by the panelists. There's a really clean show, just moving really fast and handling the stuff. It's really well done. But it's still detail and still a little bit of fun. So we don't want to lose that, but we also want to be as direct as we can there. So very, very good. We're going to do this test right now. We're not going to open the post show just yet. I'm going to put this into Mukana. I'm going to open this in just a second. We're testing what we call the Emerald City Protocol, which is this moving everybody into different meeting rooms and bouncing them around and everything else. And it's going to be a little chaotic. We're not going to do it for very long. We just want to kind of see some stuff on our end. And so we'll talk about it more on the weekend, or if you have questions about what it is. I've explained it in the past, but we just need a bunch of people to go into it. So if you are willing to, we'd like to invite you to jump in just for a little bit, and let us push you around a little bit, and then and then we can talk more about what we're doing and why we're doing it. Maybe tomorrow morning, if you have questions about it, you're more than welcome to ask, and I'm happy to discuss it. All right, everybody. Otherwise, we'll see you in just a second in the test, or we'll see you tomorrow. And a reminder that get your cooking utensils out, or at least be ready to watch it. We'd love to have as many of you as possible join us for Mad in the Kitchen. All right. Thanks, everybody. And now I'm going to paste the thing in that I just gave you, and then I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to go.